was her roommate in Chillicothe, Missouri.
Gypsy used to talk about how she was going to set it up so that way once her mother was gone, that she would get all the money. And that she would be living the best life ever. Well, I guess she's getting that now. People really need to understand Gypsy's nothing but a liar. She's now sending me threats telling me that if I don't stop talking about things, that she is going to sue me.
She's the one that, had he not done it for her, she would have just got another man because he was the fourth man she had spoke to about doing this to her mother. And that if he hadn't done it, she would have found another way to do this. She'd been talking to men and other people outside of that home for a long time. She told these men, she bragged about how she would tell them that she knew she wasn't sick. She said that she had other plans for her mother. She knew she could walk. She knew that she wasn't sick. She knew she didn't have cancer. It was all a ploy. She knew that eventually she was going to unalive her mom because she'd already set it into motion.
She did that, she said, so that she'd make sure his fingerprints were on the knife. She wanted to make sure that if she went down, he went down too.
She used to demand people pay her to keep quiet. I know of 6 couples that she had separated off of 5 House alone.
Gypsy would always tell us that she had a backup plan for everything. Nick wasn't the only person that she had that was going to help her. She had another person waiting just in case Nick backed out at the last minute. She lied to Nick. She had Nick believing at one time that she was pregnant, and she was never pregnant. And then she lied and said that her mom caused her to lose the baby and everything else because of this and that and the feeding tube and the medications. Not true. Gypsy was never pregnant. But
what's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. GypsyRose Blanchard has been very active lately, commenting in random people's videos on TikTok especially, and trying to really push the narrative about her Munchausen syndrome by proxy mother, posting her story online explaining that her mom definitely had Munchausen syndrome by proxy and that no matter what people say, blah, 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 we're gonna get into all of that. And I want to take a look at some new information that has come out that I find incredibly important, some more information and interviews with the police that have come from Gypsy's criminal case file that I think will really point to at least my new theory as to why Gypsy decided to murder her mother, why she did it at the specific time that she did, what possibly led up to the moment that she murdered her mother. So we're gonna get into all of that, but before we do, make sure you like and hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with everything I've got coming out on my channel. But let's go ahead and get into GypsyRose Blanchard. So before I get into reading some of these records as to why I have a new theory on why Gypsy, decided to kill her mom when she did, which involves Dee Dee catching her stealing, I want you to listen to a couple of portions that Audrey on TikTok posted online where she interviewed somebody that grew up around Gypsy and her mom. She even called Dee Dee her aunt. They were pretty close, and she is familiar with Gypsy and her childhood and how Gypsy behaved. She said that Gypsy had a little habit of blaming others or pretending to not know whenever she would do something wrong. I also want to show you this photo that was sent to Audrey that is from another private collection that hasn't been shown on any of the media stories or documentaries, proving that this person knows Gypsy and is familiar with the family, where you can see she's clearly standing up. She's clearly not in the wheelchair at age 5 like they wanted to let on. The person that sent this estimated the age range to be about 6 or 7-ish. And, of course, Gypsy and her family can never seem to decide when the wheelchair actually showed up or if she had to stay in it whenever she was, exposed to it. Let's play that, and then we're going to get into some of the records.
Growing up, did you spend any time with Gypsy and Dee Dee?
Growing up, we did spend time with Aunt Dee Dee and Gypsy. And my mom had a, friend group, some of whom, very close with. That's how Dee Dee became Aunt Dee Dee. She was just like my aunt, and she was treated like family. She treated us like family. We would go and do what my mama calls road day. So that's, you're out running the roads, you're going out during the day and you're doing errands, or you want to go shopping at the mall in Homa. So you go to Homa, you go have lunch, you go to the Sam's. We did all of this together. So, and even when we weren't out doing things like that, they would come over and Gypsy and I would play, or we would go over there and Gypsy and I would play together. And Gypsy was like any other kid at that age. She was 7 years younger than me. I was born in 84. She was born in 91. So in the mid-90s, yeah, there was a bit of an age gap, but we still managed to play together. And, she wasn't a terrible child. She was a nice kid. But when she wanted attention from her mom, much like many other children, turned to, it didn't matter if it was negative attention or positive attention, attention was attention. So if she would, do something bad, like she knew she wasn't supposed to, if she wanted her mom's attention, she was going to get her mom's attention.
Can you elaborate on what she would do to get her mother's attention? And can you also tell me, whenever you look back, how did you view Dee Dee's interactions with Gypsy as a parent? Was she strict?
What I mean when I say the things that she would do to get her mother's attention would be not even large things, not like these, she acted out and was throwing fits. It wasn't really like that. I mean, I remember maybe small temper tantrums that any child would have, nothing remarkable in that sense. But like a broken toy. Oh, she didn't do it. So-and-so broke it. Or knowing we're not supposed to, go this far out of the yard or away from the house or someone's sight line. Knowing she's not supposed to do that, it would be, well, so-and-so said it was okay, so I didn't think you'd be mad. Stuff like that. It just little lies or things that you're not supposed to do, but you're just going to do it anyway because you want to, but you're going to do it because you're just going to put the blame on someone else. Yeah, she was a little kid, and accountability for a child is, it's not a hard thing, but it's something that you learn. And it's just, a lot of the times, even though she had been taught that you should be honest and, you did wrong, you should own up to it, there were times she just wouldn't. The interactions that I saw between my Aunt Dee Dee and Gypsy were, to the best of my recollection, normal. Just normal mother-daughter stuff, right? Parent things. Like, I don't think she was too strict on Gypsy. I think that she watched her closer than my mom would watch me. But I almost bordering on overprotective, but not quite there. But I think in my head, it was because Gypsy was a sick child. She couldn't keep up as well sometimes. And so she just kept a closer eye on her to make sure where she wasn't getting hurt. More so of a safety thing than, making sure her kid isn't doing something bad. It was just to make sure she is safe in wherever she is and what she's doing.
You had mentioned Gypsy accusing other children of doing things that she had done. Did she seem to get pleasure out of accusing other kids?
As far as Gypsy accusing other children of doing things so that she wouldn't get in trouble for being the one that was actually doing it, I don't think that she got a malicious pleasure out of it. I think it was more so she was relieved that they're the ones that got in trouble. She got away with it. She got away with her lies. She avoided punishment. That would be, you could tell that she was happy that she got away with it. I think that she would take pleasure out of purposely picking some child out to try to get them into trouble.
So these records were posted by Starlight. I'm just going to be kind of picking and choosing some specific parts throughout just to kind of really drive home my point that I'm trying to make. But there were some things that I found really interesting that I feel like need to be pointed out. And these are probably going to be a little bit blurry. So, obviously, which is why I'm wearing my glasses, just to be able to see a little bit better, but, we'll deal with it. But at the top of this document, where it's saying that basically all of these are going to be police interviews, recording what was said, and phone conversations or whatever, getting information from those that knew Dee Dee and Gypsy. One person said that they saw Wednesday, June 10th, that they saw Gypsy put their trash can out on the corner on Wednesday morning. He said nothing seemed unusual that day, which we know that Dee Dee was technically killed on the 10th. So, there are a couple times throughout these that they say that they saw Gypsy and Dee Dee on the 10th, which is pretty weird. Of course, it could just be a misremembrance type of thing where they were getting the days confused, so, But this one, it says a friend named Marcia, who had been friends with Gypsy and Dee Dee since they had moved from Louisiana. Marcia actually had an extra key to Dee Dee's house, and it said that Marcia knew that Dee Dee's father was still alive and lived in Louisiana. Marcia said that Gypsy's father is Rod Blanchard. She told me that Rod was abusive toward Dee Dee when they were together, and he tried to collect Dee Dee's life insurance after Hurricane Katrina, assuming that they were dead. Which, you know what, I'm going to say I don't think that's really far-fetched. That does seem like something Rod and Christy would probably do. Yeah, they like the money, and that's been very, very apparent by how many interviews and documentaries that Gypsy's been a part of, because they obviously get a cut of that. So I definitely would not be surprised, because a lot of us even question whenever Dee Dee and Gypsy were, evacuated and all this stuff. They literally didn't do anything looking for them if they really cared and were so concerned about, Dee Dee, and from their own words, that they really believed that Gypsy was super disabled and all this. They did nothing to search. So they probably were maybe hoping that they were dead. But of course, that could be a lie from Dee Dee, who knows? This interview with a woman named Meg, who was from Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, said that on June 26th, they spoke to her and they had made contact with Meg Larson in reference to trips taken by Dee Dee and Gypsy to Universal Studios in Florida. They had received complimentary tickets to Universal Studios on several different occasions. Meg told me that she met Gypsy and Dee Dee in January of 2015 when they were at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida for a Harry Potter themed event. Meg said that she spent approximately 4 hours with Dee Dee and Gypsy when they arrived at Universal Studios. They said that Gypsy was in a wheelchair and was wearing a costume with a wig. She said that Dee Dee was adamant about any photos being taken of Gypsy or photos that she was in, that she did not want to be in her wheelchair. Meg said that Dee Dee would lift Gypsy out of her wheelchair and set her down where she needed to be for the photos. Meg told me that the Universal Studios gave Gypsy a Harry Potter wand as a gift, and that Dee Dee and Gypsy had said that Gypsy was battling her second bout with leukemia and that the wand would give her strength to beat the cancer again. They also said that Gypsy had sleep and breathing disorders. But, it's funny because Gypsy is, 24, 25 almost years old at this point? And she wanted to sit there and act like she really believed that she had cancer up until, her attorney told her otherwise. So she didn't ask any questions about that. Like, hey, Mom, when are we going to the cancer doctor? Hey, Mom, what did that test say? Hey, Mom, because we know they got medical records together. We know that Gypsy had access to those medical records because they were quite literally just in a filing cabinet in the bedroom. And we know that Dee Dee also left Gypsy alone in the house for various time periods, hence why she was allowed to film, 300 disturbing videos to send to Nicholas. Which, it's funny because just recently Gypsy commented on another content creator's video, which was showing a little boy who I believe maybe had cancer or some other terrible illness, and he got his Make-A-Wish trip, and the caption on there was basically see, Gypsy, this is what you took from another child when you were 23 years old or whatever. And Gypsy actually decided to comment on that and say, I was 10 years old and it's not my fault. My mother did that. I tried to donate $4,000 to, make amends basically. And it's Gypsy literally couldn't even leave a video about a real sick child alone, knowing that clearly at 25 years old, she's going to Universal Studios. She wasn't a 10-year-old child. She thinks by saying that age that, yeah, maybe she went when she was 10, but she also went when she was 13, 15, 16, 20. She knew what was going on. There's no way that this girl can order a taxi, arrange a hotel room, do all this crap, look on Google Maps to, look at the state population or the town population where Nicholas lives and find all these surrounding cities and look at apartments, but she didn't know anything else. That, they can't happen at the same time. So here's where I want you to really start paying attention to what is being said, because this is happening just a few months to a few weeks to a few days up until Dee Dee was murdered by Gypsy and Nicholas. So in this interview, a police officer is speaking to somebody from a Catholic church, and it was said that Gypsy and Claudine attended the church. They met through Mercy Hospital. Sister Elizabeth told the officer that she gave Dee Dee and Gypsy gift baskets after they first met them. She remembered how grateful Dee Dee was to receive the gift basket, and that she told Elizabeth that they would be able to pay their mortgage because of receiving the gift basket. And it also says that she told that Dee Dee had said to Sister Elizabeth that her house had been robbed and that they had stolen money and medication. Because of this, Dee Dee needed utility bills paid twice recently due to their money being stolen. So due to this robbery happening, Dee Dee needed church to pay their utility bills. Dee Dee also told Sister Elizabeth that she suffered from PTSD, and the woman really believed everything that Dee Dee and Gypsy had to say. But just a few months before Dee Dee was murdered, Dee Dee was having to reach out and get help from the Catholic Church to pay her utility bills because of these bizarre robberies. So in another one, they're looking into Dee Dee's history of calling the police, whether she is the victim or like the suspect in it. And so they provide the record of all of the times that Dee Dee has been involved in anything in Missouri. In 2004, there had been 2 entries. So December 2004, June 2005. In 2004, Dee Dee reported her vehicle had been damaged. The damage included a broken lock and mirror. In 2005, Dee Dee reported her wallet being left at Walmart and her money being taken from the wallet before it was recovered. Now, of course, there is a possibility that maybe Dee Dee really did leave her wallet at Walmart and the money was taken, or maybe she didn't at all. Or maybe Gypsy took the wallet out and took money, because we know that Gypsy herself has admitted to a long history of stealing money from her mom. We know that, and it makes sense because she was ordering so many like bizarre items, and especially for her BDSM stuff, even prior to Nicholas was ever in the picture. Although she tries to blame that whole like interest on Nicholas, she was purchasing those things prior to Nicholas ever being introduced. So let's see. It says in 2009, Dee Dee was the victim of theft. Someone stole her keys or her key fob. In 2009, which was when DCFS was called to the home to report Gypsy's well-being, a medical doctor reported that the disabilities claimed by mother and daughter were fraudulent. Not just mother, okay? In 2010, there was a domestic assault, and Dee Dee was the suspect, which I believe involved the Domino's pizza guy, where he wouldn't accept a coupon. And then 2012, we've got stealing, and it says theft from Hobby Lobby, which we know, I think it was Gypsy doing it, because Gypsy had the items shoved under her chair, even though she blames that on her mother. Dee Dee voluntarily said, check the chair, but I think if she really thought anything was in there, then she wouldn't have said check the chair. That's just my opinion. 2012, found property. Victim, miscellaneous pieces of mail was located by an individual. Stealing from vehicle, Dee Dee was the victim. Her license plates were stolen from the vehicle. In 2013, property damage, Dee Dee was the victim. Vehicle damaged by a random male in a Walmart parking lot. 2015, motor vehicle crash. She was the driver and she was struck by a second vehicle. 2015, a burglary. She called and reported the burglary. She was the victim. Reports of several medications and cash taken from inside the residence. So she actually called the police in 2015 about this burglary. So that means they would have had a record and they would have either been looking for it. And again, this is why I'm thinking that it honestly, maybe Dee Dee didn't realize that Gypsy was stealing so much and so often from her, and maybe she found out prior to her being murdered. Then the sheriff's office decided to speak with a friend of Dee Dee and Gypsy's named Sue, who was familiar with them. And it says that Sue stated that she lived in New Orleans. She had met Dee Dee and Gypsy almost 15 years ago and believed Gypsy was 3 years older than her son and that they became friends. Sue and her son would travel from New Orleans to visit the Blanchards' apartment in Golden Meadow. They were affected by the hurricane, but she recalled several of the times they were at the Blanchards' apartment for movie nights and to let her son play with Gypsy. Sue recalled Gypsy being very, very smart and never appearing to be abused or held captive in the home. When Sue and her son were around for a lengthy period of time, she would notice Gypsy would drop the, quote, childish voice. And Sue began to realize that the handicaps were fake whenever Gypsy decided to stand up from her wheelchair several times to walk to the restroom. So Gypsy had no fear of walking in front of people that were over at her house. So at that point, Sue realized that she's faking. Sue's sister, whose name is also Dee, also observed Gypsy walk. So that's multiple people reporting that they've seen Gypsy just walking around whenever she decided to. And that's pretty crazy because obviously if Sue's there hanging out with Dee Dee, Dee Dee would have been right there. It's not like Gypsy was over at her house. They were hanging out with them. So her mom would have been right there. And if she was scared to death to the point where she said that she never even considered standing up in public because of fear, why is she doing it in front of other people? She also recalled that she took a trip with the Blanchards to a museum in Louisiana and that Gypsy knew a lot about the art of the museum and would speak like she was an adult. She told me that a professor at the museum was impressed with Gypsy and her knowledge of the art, and Sue said that Gypsy was not mentally handicapped. Sue believed that Gypsy always had the mental capacity to get up and leave the residence, as well as take care of herself. She told me that Gypsy was capable of making her own decisions and believed that Gypsy was an active participant in the disability fraud. She also stated that the Blanchards were kicked out of the Ronald McDonald House after the staff learned that they did not have any medical appointments nearby. And Sue later saw news reports about the Blanchards getting the Habitat for Humanity house in Springfield and Gypsy having leukemia. When she called Dee Dee about the news report, Claudine told Sue that there had been a misunderstanding and that Gypsy actually had anemia, which a lot of us content creators and, people that have especially watched my videos, we've went back and forth about this, about Gypsy having anemia and like a very specific type of anemia, which could possibly be categorized as could develop into leukemia. Like it's on one of my other videos. But one of Dee Dee's friends named Jane said that she believed Dee Dee suffered from some psychological issues. And this is one of the very few records that we have of anybody mentioning any psychological issues with Dee Dee, where she said that Dee Dee stated that she was bipolar and often thought that people were watching her. So, a lot of people say that they're bipolar whenever they're having some kind of emotional up and down roller coaster type of things. We hear people say that all the time. So it's very possible that Dee Dee was just saying that. Even Gypsy herself literally said that in the text messages to Nicholas when she freaked out on Nicholas and said, "I think I'm bipolar. Is there medication for bipolar, hun?" And he's like, "Oh, if you think that would help, yeah, definitely take it." But it said that Jane said that Dee Dee felt that people were watching her. And she said in 2006, she claimed that a male was looking into the windows of her residence. Dee Dee also told Jane during several conversations that Dee Dee felt their house was haunted. At one point, Dee Dee also taped over the camera on her laptop, telling Jane that she believed someone was watching her through the camera. Jane told me that Dee Dee would have movie nights in order to raise money for Gypsy's trips. However, Dee Dee would be upset because she would sell popcorn and drinks to the kids who came by the house, and their parents wouldn't send them with money, so she'd have to still give them the snacks and drinks for free. One other conversation with Jane and Dee Dee complained that she was not receiving gift cards and money that was being sent to Gypsy by family and friends. Jane noticed that over the past 6 months, Dee Dee would write things on her own Facebook page about having medical issues, including having a lung removed. She believed that Dee Dee was originally seeing a doctor in Aurora, however, she did not know who she was seeing for treatment after moving to wherever. Okay, so it's very possible that Dee Dee was becoming paranoid about getting caught. You're doing something for years, you're running a fraud, you're running a scam for so long, yeah, that's gonna start to eat at you. I think it would probably start to mess with anybody. So it's very possible that she thought maybe she was being watched by the police or the FBI because it's fraud. And, I know of a lot of people that cover up their laptop or certain cameras because they feel like the government can tap into it and they're not, necessarily schizophrenic or bipolar or anything. But I think a lot of it has to do with Dee Dee's maybe starting to worry that she's going to get caught, maybe with Gypsy acting out, and clearly there's missing gift cards and missing money, so there's more money being stolen. All of this is happening right up until Dee Dee was killed. And as far as writing things on her own Facebook about medical issues or having a lung removed, and again, remember, Gypsy did have access to that Facebook profile. We know Gypsy spent a ton of time online, and who's to know if Dee Dee really spent a lot of time on Facebook? We don't really know, but we do know that Gypsy 100% did. That's why she had so many Facebook profiles, and she 100% did have the password to log on to that shared profile. So if Dee Dee wasn't even really getting on Facebook very much, Gypsy could have very easily posted that because, again, Gypsy and Nicholas were planning this murder for like 2 years. And, they were going back and forth on what to do. Perhaps they were setting it up to look like some sort of, natural passing or whatever. And maybe that was her mental mind frame at the time. Who knows? But I really, really feel like Dee Dee began to understand that it was Gypsy stealing from her the entire time, and that is why Dee Dee got murdered when she did. And in the police interview where they're writing it out with David Blanchard, we all know David Blanchard. He was the one that allegedly climbed through the window and searched the house and didn't find anything, and didn't find the body or anything, whatever. But his interview I found a little bit interesting because he said they being David, his wife, Dee Dee, and Gypsy were at the Dickerson Park Zoo for Dream Night on June 5th, 2015, so 4 days before the murder. At the zoo, David learned that they had medication, over $1,000 cash, and a laptop computer stolen from their residence. David stated that the laptop being stolen concerned him because of the Facebook post comments that were posted onto Dee Dee's Facebook page, and David believed that the comment could have come from the suspect who stole the laptop. And we know that Gypsy trashed the laptop. We know that's in her text message records. I can literally pull up the text message for you where you can see where she says, "I trashed the laptop," which led to her and Nicholas getting into a huge argument. We know that Gypsy stole $1,000 from the nest egg. All of this was happening, and Dee Dee was bringing it up to people. She was telling a lot of people about it. Perhaps Dee Dee was really catching on that something weird was happening because she's telling multiple people. Even the ones that I'm reading, there are more records of Dee Dee telling people that my house is getting broken into, like my money is being stolen, my meds, my laptop, all of this stuff is being taken from my house, like something's up, something's going on. And this person, who was the president of the Homeowners Association, they were going to do like a neighborhood cleanup thing, and it says that Dee Dee also told him that there had been a burglary at the house, and Dee Dee suspected that maybe it was Debbie Ackers or her son, and they may have had something to do with the burglary or stealing of the medication. He said he didn't know for sure or know for a fact that the Ackers were involved with the burglary, but did know that the family was going through some issues such as a divorce and financial issues. He stated that he wouldn't think that Dee Dee would sell any of the pills due to Dee Dee having some kind of kidney problems and Gypsy being in the wheelchair. Goss stated that he had never seen Gypsy walk during that time that he has known them, and he didn't know of anything about a laptop being stolen, only about the medication. But he also did know that Dee Dee told him that she had been shot with a BB gun and robbed while at Walmart approximately 2 or 3 years ago. He thought it was a little bit odd that she was telling him this. So Dee Dee's telling all of these people around her, pretty much, it doesn't even matter that even if they're not like incredibly close friends, she's telling everybody that her house is being burglarized, like things are happening. And I feel like you would only do that if you think something bad is going to happen. And another woman named Shelby met and visited with Dee Dee and Gypsy on the 9th, and they said that everything appeared fine at that time. Shelby stated that she knocked on the Blanchards' door on June 10th, 12th, and 13th, but received no response. She added that their SUV was present, leading her to believe that they were home each time that she knocked on the door. They said that they noted Dee Dee would let anyone inside the residence. The Blanchard had also recently disclosed that they believed a neighbor had stolen from them. And Dee Dee was maybe suspecting Debbie's son as the person that broke into the house, because at one point, Debbie's son had not been nice to Dee Dee and Gypsy in the past and had recently they believed that he had recently stolen medication from their residence. So we know from Gypsy's own words in multiple documentaries and multiple interviews that Gypsy always said that her and her mother had gotten into a huge argument prior to the murder. And although Gypsy claimed in Dr. Phil that it was because she didn't want to have another surgery that she had had for 100 times, and then in another interview, she claimed that it was because she wanted her feeding tube removed, and her mother absolutely refused to allow her to remove her feeding tube, even though we know that Gypsy really didn't say anything about removing the feeding tube, because when she's texting Nicholas, she said that she was going to go get it changed and that they wouldn't have to worry about it for the next 6 months to a year, indicating that, because Gypsy always said that she knew that she could walk and she knew that she could eat. So therefore, she knew she didn't really need the tube and was eating totally fine because, Again, we've heard her talking about the mashed potatoes and the sugar in Disney. Of course, that doesn't make any sense why she would have such a blow-up argument, because even in Mommy Dead and Dearest, she said that that argument lasted for days. So an argument over the feeding tube or getting it changed doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But what does make sense to me is Dee Dee may be coming to the realization that it was Gypsy stealing from her house all along. When we know that Gypsy has a bad habit of blaming other people when she does something wrong. So perhaps it's possible that Dee Dee, who had already made a police report, was threatening to report Gypsy for the theft, because you can absolutely do that. If you're caught stealing from your parent, they can 100% press charges on you for that. And I feel like that would maybe make more sense as to why Gypsy decided to go ahead and go through with the murder, because at that point she would have been at risk of going to jail. She would have been prosecuted for stealing so much money, medication, a laptop, all of that stuff, and she wouldn't have been able to do anything, and that would have ruined everything for her. That would be something that would cause a lot of people to freak out. So the whole, why didn't she run away? Why didn't she do that? She couldn't do that, because then her mother could have called the police and reported her for stealing thousands of dollars, which would have been a felony. She could have went to prison, and I'm sure she was freaking out about it. And so that is why, possibly, she decided to go ahead and, pressure Nick to go through with the murder, because she was really pushing hard. I mean, we even see it in the text messages where she's really laying it on thick. She probably figured that her mom was getting a little bit, hot on her trail. And I feel like that would cause an explosive argument. And Dee Dee was probably scared, because we all know in that Mommy Dead and Dearest documentary, Gypsy literally said that her mom said, "Don't hurt me," before she went to bed. Why would everybody always wonder, why would she say that? That doesn't even make any sense. Even an argument about the feeding tube, why would she tell Gypsy, "Don't hurt me"? How does that make any sense? It would make sense if maybe they were fighting for days and days and days and going at it with each other because Gypsy got caught stealing cash, laptops, whatever. All of this stuff that had been going missing for years at a time. That's probably, Gypsy was probably messing with Dee Dee's mind. I mean, honestly, if Dee Dee was getting paranoid that people were watching her and feeling like people were, burglarizing her house, yeah, that would probably make anybody freak out. And then realizing that it had been Gypsy stealing from her nest egg, yeah, she probably, knowing Gypsy had already shot her once, I would not be surprised whatsoever if Dee Dee had really brought up or at least threatened Gypsy with calling the cops on her, and that is why Gypsy had to get rid of her mom. Because it's pretty clear to all of us that Gypsy didn't really have any sort of plan about, getting better. She didn't bring anything up about, the medication. She didn't bring any medicine with her. The whole overall plan in the scheme doesn't really make sense as to why she went through with it, and she did not just run away with Nicholas, because she knew that she had that threat. Her mom could have her thrown in jail and ruin her life. She wouldn't get to go out and do what she wanted. But if she killed her mom, then she would have gotten the house. She would have still been able to get disability. Because, that would make somebody really mad, especially a parent. You're having to go to the Catholic Church and get money for utility bills because you can't pay your mortgage and you can't pay your utility bills. Your electric's going to get shut off or whatever. And then you find out it's your daughter stealing from the house that she lives in. That would make so much sense to me, but, it's possible that they were arguing about the feeding tube, but I feel like that doesn't make any sense as to why it would be such a huge blow-up argument. And even in Gypsy's book, she said that the argument was about her getting her throat cut, even though that surgery, which was just looking in her throat to see how it works when she's swallowing or whatever, to see how her throat is working, was a 1-minute procedure when she was already put out when she got those teeth extracted. It's in the medical records. That's been proven. Why she put in the book that her mom wanted to cut her throat and silence her voice? That also doesn't make any sense. And that's why there's so many conflicting narratives. But I feel like it just makes way more sense that Gypsy got caught and her mom figured it out and was going to press charges on her. She was going to call the cops on her. She had already reported to the police. Whether they were looking for somebody or not, who knows? But the record was there. Maybe that is what made Gypsy literally freak out and lose her mind and go through with it. Because, again, people always want to know, like, why did you not just run away? Like, in that moment, how hard, like, you had a hotel booked, you had a cab called, you were going to go to a different state, you would have been able to get away with Nicholas. She wouldn't have followed you there, like, none of that. And the whole, like, power of attorney nonsense that she's got, or whatever, claiming to be mentally incompetent, that's not even real. But being threatened with going to jail or going to prison for theft, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. But that at least is my theory. I feel like there's nothing else that would make any sense as to what that huge blow-up argument could have been about. But I want to know what you guys think about it. What do you think about Gypsy getting caught stealing by her mom? Do you think that is a real possibility where Dee Dee would literally be afraid for her life when she went to bed that night and was murdered by her own daughter and her boyfriend? And I think that makes a lot more sense as to why Dee Dee was so paranoid having all of these things happen. And Gypsy, who claimed herself she can lie without any conscience whatsoever, she was probably playing with her mom and playing with her mind and, like, really getting her all screwed up in the head and confused. And, like, even if she believed her house was haunted, there had to be a lot of things going on. Dee Dee was feeling paranoid. But I want to know your thoughts, so drop them down below in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and hit the subscribe button. I will see you guys on the next one. Okay, bye.